Welcome everyone to the Indigenous Governance Speaker Series. My name is Rhiannon Klein and I'm the chair of the Indigenous Governance degree program here at Yukon University. I would just like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today on the traditional territories of the Kwanlin First Nation and the Ta'an Council, where I feel very honored to be living and working and playing every day. But we're also joined with people from across Canada and across the North, which is really exciting part of being able to deliver these speaker series virtually. We're very excited for the last two speakers that we have remaining in our speaker series this semester. I just wanted to quickly plug our last speaker who will be joining us next month is Erin Matariki Carr. And Matariki will be joining us virtually from New Zealand, and she'll be speaking to the resurgence of Maori law, the intertwining within the colonial legal systems, and looking at both the successes and the challenges of the granting of legislative legal personality to the Te Urewa rainforest, which took place in 2014. So we're really excited to have Matariki join us next month. But today, I am very excited to welcome Da-kal-a-ma Jocelyn Joe-Strack. Jocelyn is Yukon University's first Indigenous Knowledge Research Chair. She's a member of the Wolf Clan of Champagne and Aishihik First Nations, and she's an Indigenous scientist, artist, and entrepreneur who strives to evolve tomorrow's policies by blending yesterday's ancestral lessons with today's systemic knowledge. She uses her experience as a trained microbiologist, hydrologist, and policy analyst, along with her cultural foundations, to explore resilient approaches to challenges such as climate change, societal well-being, and prosperity. Her research focuses on youth healing and leadership, revitalizing traditional storytelling, and fulfilling the spirit and intent of the Yukon Land Claim Agreements. We're very excited to have Jocelyn presenting today. I would just like to quickly remind everyone to please keep yourself muted throughout today's presentation. There will be time at the end for questions and discussion. We'll invite you to raise your hand or type a question into the chat box and we can read it out loud. I'd also just like to remind you that these sessions are being recorded. If you prefer not to be recorded during the question period, please feel free to send me a private message and I can pause the recording. You'll also be able to access today's presentation as well as all the past presentations through the Yukon University website. But without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Jocelyn Joe-Strack. Thank you very much, Jocelyn.
Goodness cheesh, Rhiannon, goodness cheesh, and Nante, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. And I just want to start us off in a good way with a nice prayer and just a moment of thanks and quiet. So this one say, Goodness cheesh, Goodness cheesh, Goodness cheesh to Kiran Cow. Goodness cheesh for this moment, for this return of the light, for this time of new beginnings, of warmth, and of anticipation of the time to come. Taking moments for these transitions, for these transformations, and finding gratitude and grounding in all that happens, and knowing the lessons and the teachings of all that we can be. Please send love and strength to those who are hungry, those who are cold and homeless and grieving. Give strength to the land as it goes through this time of change. Love to the animals and to the new little ones who are coming. Goodness cheesh to Kiranka. And goodness cheesh to all of you. Thank you very much for spending your lunch hour with me. I'm grateful for this time and for this opportunity to share with you some of my journey from being Yukon University's Indigenous Knowledge Research Chair. I've been in my role for the past year. I started in January 2021. And prior to that, I was a consultant. And so I was working a lot in climate change, in land planning with my First Nation, Champagne and Aishihik. And it was a very interesting transition for me coming to Yukon U. It took me a little bit to let go of my consulting ways where I felt like I had to be super duper busy and like counting all of my time and really doing a million things at once. And I still do a million things at once, but I enjoy doing all of it. And it's all working towards a similar sort of goal. So what I work towards is, as Rhiannon shared, thinking about the spirit and intent of our final agreements of Yukon First Nations of the Yukon. And I was reminded this morning of a story that I've told before, but I hadn't actually intended to tell today. But Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow and the journey of Yukon First Nations, it began a long time ago. I'm in the process right now of working with my Yukon First Nations Climate Action Fellowship with 13 young people from across the Yukon who are developing a vision for the next 50 years. And currently we're writing their plan. And so I'm in this place of writing right now, and of dreaming and of synthesizing and thinking about all that we can be, all the possibilities, the potential, the ability for our Yukon that was born from this vision 50 years ago almost now of Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow. In a meeting with some of the team this morning, one of my coworkers, my colleagues, she said, Jocelyn, writing this document, I think about you and your dad, which is so sweet. But my dad was one of the original leaders of Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow. He was the executive director of the Yukon Native Brotherhood at the time, and I'm proud that his signature is in that historic document. And he is one of the young men who's standing on the steps of the Parliament and was there when they presented to Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. But my friend, she said, Joss, we were writing this thing, and I was thinking about all of the continuity of what it means for you, for your people, and for our people in this journey of the Yukon, that my dad, 50 years ago plus, sat with the same sort of diligence and hard work writing Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow. And they were envisioning a better tomorrow for the children to come. The spirit was about working together. It was about one Yukon, all Yukon First Nations people. They sat down and they thought about where we were today. And they thought about the strength of our ancestors. They were fortunate at that time to have the wonderful grounding knowing of our elders who directed them in what it is that they should be doing in setting out this vision for tomorrow. Today, we've been implementing our agreements for the past 25 years. So Champagne and Aishihik, we settled in 1993. So even long, almost 30 years now. Make sure I got my math right. And we've worked really hard, really hard to implement our self-government. It's been a really rewarding, yet a challenging journey. Now, as I work with young people, we're thinking really hard about the next 50 years. We're thinking very hard about the challenges of our time, of climate change, of inequality, of anxiety, of opioids. There's just so much that young people are facing today. I don't know if it's more or I think it's more than what my dad might have faced, but I don't know, it's different. What my dad faced residential school. Anyway, I'm just spending some time reflecting on that with you, because this journey and this purpose of being First Nations in the Yukon, being a Yukoner at this time of transition, at this time of change, at this time of awakening that we are going through as a people, I think is really leading to a lot of energy and a lot of belief in new possibilities. And that is much of what my work here at the university is about. And in working with young people particularly, I find so many teachings and lessons for tomorrow. I really believe that there is a potential for us to grow and to come together and to still be working towards the intentions of Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow. Oh, a lot of what I'm thinking about lately and working towards, or where I find myself, is in between the tensions of Western and Indigenous ways of doing, knowing, and being. And I was previously a scientist. I guess I can still call myself a scientist. My children call me a scientist. But now I call myself a scientist in recovery, because I find that the reductionist type approaches of science, where we are categorizing and minimizing everything to something that we can measure and define, it really conflicts with my desire to view everything alive with potential and with relationship and obligation to these different things that come about into my life. I think about trees. And so there's a way that we can measure trees, right? We can count how many they are. We can count how tall they are. We can count how much they breathe and how much carbon or how much oxygen they put off, how much they soak up nitrogen from the soil. But if you've ever had the opportunity to stand and to breathe with a tree, to know a tree, to know its dignity, its being, to realize that it experiences every day, that it has awareness of your energy as you walk by. They might not have the same agency that we do to move, and we don't even really acknowledge that we can do that. But they move with the air. They move with the ground. And they move with the energy that comes around them. The old people, they used to know how to recognize, or they used to know how to connect with the being and the dignity of a tree. They could even just use their hands and just hold a rock, a tree, a plant, and have empathy and connection to its being. And from that, they learned about the needs of a tree. They learned if a tree was thirsty or suffering. They learned that a tree, the wind, it feels good, moves all of its limbs, stretches it out. And pretty soon we get to witness the wonderful moment where we see the trees wake up. In the winter, they sleep, they hibernate. When you try and connect with them, their energy is just very low. But then in the spring, and I hope that you guys all take a moment to witness, because it'll be about a month, I guess. In about a month, we're going to see all the trees and their branches just lift up. And it's a good moment, that awakening of spring. How do we bring teachings and knowings like this into our everyday lives? That's a lot of what my work is about. I do work with a lot of our UFA land claims boards, with YESA, with Land Use Planning Council. I help out with water, and I really try to encourage people to take off their hats. So we are very much educated and taught to sit down at a table as this predefined identity. So I am the Indigenous Knowledge Research Chair, and I am here to talk to you about everything that is Indigenous knowledge from this chair. But that's not who I am. I'm so much more than that. I am a daughter. I am a mother. I am somebody who talks to trees. I am alive. And I'm journeying through this earth, as we all are. I'm constantly learning. I'm humbled. I'm strengthened. I'm just being directed to where it is that I'm supposed to go with the words that I have, and with, song and power and knowing that I'm open to. And with that, I go forward. And how I sit at a table, and with what I come with who I am, and all of that history, all the way back to my dad, to my grandpa, to, Asuya, to Crow coming with fire. I sit here and I am looking forward. And it's a challenge for us to think this way now, because we have been taught to really think about what is in front of us, what we can see, what we can know, what we can measure, what we can have security and confidence in, and what is, just this moment and what could be. We plan a lot. So I find exercises like land planning really interesting. Land planning is actually some of the work that I was doing as an academic. I was trying to figure out a way to challenge, or I guess meet the conflict of land planning without maps. So planning right now is purely a reductionist, linear-based process, in the Yukon at least, where we use maps to make decisions about places that we've never even stepped foot on, places that don't belong to anybody. But we can measure them, we can use satellite, we can make predictions, we can have a bit of past data, to the 1970s, mostly here in the Yukon. That's about as far back as our data packs go, which is very short in the thinking era, all the way back to Crow in the Fire. Can't even see it. But we make decisions with it. We plan for the future. That's where numbers like 100-year flood come from. They come from less than 100 years worth of modeling. So how do you know? But we make decisions, we build our roads, we build our homes, and we do all of this with a very small amount of knowing. And so this is where some of my, and that's okay. All knowledge is welcome at the table. But part of what I'm trying to bring forward is that there are multiple ways of knowing. There are multiple ways of understanding. And so there is a spirit and a heart-centered way of understanding the world, a body, energy connected way of understanding the world. And then there is a mental, logical way of understanding the world. In our current systems, though, we spend a lot of time up here. That's why I think we struggle a lot with anxiety. Anxiety is when your brain just can't stop spinning with worry. And in that spinning, people that they're searching, they're looking for answers, for stability, for security in a world where they don't feel stable or secure. Because our root to stability and security is actually in our hearts. It's in our bodies, and it's in spirituality and energy, if that is what you're open to. Knowing and being a whole person and being able to make decisions and walk this life with your whole person is a strength. And it gives you a better sense. It gives you confidence. I've come to understand this along with others through my work in the Yukon First Nations Climate Action Fellowship. So with these 13 young people who I work with that I spoke of earlier, we've been working together for the past year. And they've come up with a beautiful vision that is not mine to share today, because they will be presenting it at the end of April. And here I encourage you to stay tuned, because what they have to present is just so beautiful. And it is a pathway moving that sees us living a life quite differently moving forward. But some of the philosophy that we're working with is this whole person being. And we're grateful to many of our elders who have guided us, that have brought us into this understanding, this place of realizing our limitations of being so mind-dominated, mind-centered in everything we do, in how we walk life, in how we make decisions, in how we teach, in how we do everything essentially within our systems, how we make policies in this mind-centered, logical way. What we're trying to explore now is, what does it mean if we do things in a heart-centered way? Part of what we struggle with is that in our mind-dominated systems, we've undervalued the role of emotions and heart in our daily lives, in what we teach young people, what we teach our children. So emotional competency and self-awareness is not something that is normalized within our culture. It's something that we have to work to. It's an extracurricular, not a foundation. Long ago, though, the people, they understood the role of anger. There was a place where if anger came out, it was very purposeful. It was very meaningful. And so it was wielded in this controlled way to address the root of the anger. which is often sadness or grief or something else that is rooted to hurt and to fear. We have a lot to be afraid of today, but in this mind-dominated society, we have diminished and numbed the role of heart in what we do every day and how we make decisions at tables. So heart and spirit, emotion, reaction, and truth to your actual being is not welcome in the classroom or in the boardroom. And part of that is because we are not necessarily all in control and grounded and connected and balanced in our energy, in our being. And the same goes too for spirituality. Long ago, every walk the ancestors took was in ceremony. Eating was ceremonial. Harvesting was ceremonial. There was always an offer of thanks and acknowledgement of the spirit and the being of what it was that you were taking, and in turn giving offer for exchange and reciprocity is the fancy word. But it was all done very mindfully, with a lot of diligence, a lot of integrity, and without anything taken for granted. Those are some of the places where we can start thinking a little bit more and thinking about how we bring these different ways of viewing and seeing the world, of relating to the world, into what we do in our daily lives and into the places where we have influence or authority to create change in our daily lives. One of the things that comes with being an Indigenous academic is this very interesting responsibility, I find. And this is just me sort of reflecting in this role, because I acknowledge, because I am a leader who was raised by leaders, I acknowledge the responsibility for me to not take this position, this role for granted, and to use it to demonstrate ways forward and to also be the voice for those who may not be able to speak in their continued oppression. And it becomes a really challenging thing to do because there's this very tactful, nuanced navigation that's required between this tension of Western expectations with heart and spirit-centered approaches. They often, to be honest, directly like conflict. And there are things that come up in our Western systems, such as fiscal year-end deadlines and funding arrangements and, policy limitations. I don't like to focus a lot on the negative, but I do also like to be aware of where we can be doing better and moving into a place now where I do believe that it's okay to start vocalizing when something can be better. And originally, to be honest, I'm not actually a person who likes a lot of conflict. Before I had children, I said to my 6-year-old daughter the other day, I was like, did you know I never used to yell? It's like yelling was not something I did. Even when I was a kid, my mom would be like, get angry, Jocelyn. And I'd be like, just sad and sulky. But these days, I'm trying to be more aware of when it's time, instead of, I can get mad now because I'm a mother. And it's been interesting, the teaching of children in terms of, working up your gumption to decide when to fight or flight. Sometimes you got to stand up for yourself to the 6-year-old who's significantly stronger willed than you are. But it's taught me a lot about when it's time to be tactful in this world moving forward that is still causing climate change and inequality. And the climate change and inequality, I believe, my fellows believe, the young people who I work with believe, is coming from this place of this disconnect, this imbalance, this mind-dominated approach to how we make decisions, how we educate, and how we walk in every day. It sets our priorities. The people long ago, they used to count to 10, and then there was enough, or there was many, there was too much. And they never walked through with the certainty or the arrogance that they could truly know or define all that there is. Today, though, we pivot the entire foundation of our society on the certainty of numbers. Our well-being, our housing, our food, our bank accounts, it's all numbers. And in this, I really just believe that we're losing out on something. I don't necessarily have answers, but I do like to create conversations about just acknowledging that we are not living to our full potential. I was with an elder the other day for the Yukon First Nations Salmon Knowledge Hub, which is a project that I'm a part of with the Council of Yukon First Nations and Canadian Mountain Network. And this is a wonderful project. And it really speaks to a lot of the philosophy that I'm trying to share with you here about the intention is that we are going to host a salmon ceremony this summer with the intention of honoring and calling the salmon back home. We are trying to restore our original relationship and obligation for salmon and demonstrate the validity of honoring and celebrating salmon in a spiritual way. I'm even hoping myself, I'm trying to work up to fasting. That's one thing that the long ago people they did was they fasted all the time. They fasted for ceremony. They fasted if there was bad energy around. And it's not for me to explain it fully in this space, but in a place like the Salmon Ceremony, you actually could potentially go deeper into spirituality, into belief, into power. And there is a potential for power that is rooted in some of these deeper knowings of the long ago ways. We are not living up to our potential. But yeah, the Salmon Ceremony, we hosted an online gathering just a couple weeks ago. And I'm grateful to say that it was very well attended, and it was a wonderful conversation and a moment of dreaming about what it is that we can do for salmon. It was very positive, and a lot of the conversations right now about salmon are quite negative. And one of the things when you're in this space of thinking about energy is if you put out negative fear and doubt, that's kind of what ends up coming back your way. But if we live in this place where we're just positive and we're believing, we're in flow, we're not trying to fight or conform, we're just trying to be and be open to direction and opportunity and possibility, it's a little bit of a lighter way of going about everything. And I think that's what the work of the Salmon Ceremony is about. It is meant to be quite spiritual. And so we started in a very good way. And one of the elders, we did a fire ceremony. And so I went down there with him and, we lit the fire and we started to call the salmon. And afterwards we were standing around. It was actually kind of cold out this morning. It was one of those, it was warm and then surprisingly it was cold. And so we were standing around and he was reflecting on the term of part of the land, part of the water that was shared by Teslin Tlingit Elder Virginia Smarch. Part of the land, part of the water. And we have this idea, this hurt that we carry within us today, that we are no longer part of the land, part of the water. We are separated, we are disconnected, and we are hurting Earth instead. Something that the elder said, though, he said, you know what? I was reflecting on that, and I got this great feeling of confidence because we're still part of the land, part of the water. We never, ever were separated. We still are not separated. Every single decision, every single action that we make plays a role in the entirety of Earth, in the balance of Earth, and the harmony and the energy and the flow and the cycles of Earth. The challenge, though, is that in our confidence in numbers, misplaced confidence in this only mind-centered thinking, is that we've become a little bit unbalanced. And have been operating outside of the natural flow and the cycles and the openness and direction of Earth. Doesn't mean that we're not a part of everything. It just means that perhaps we've become a little numbed to all that there is and all that there can be. And it begins just with openness and belief. And so even in a space like this, I know I talk around in circles, but it's all just about offering a moment of peace and reflection, offering a moment of safe space just to simply believe that there could be more, that we are capable of more, that can change. You know, because we did change. Through Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow and our self-government agreements, we did change. And we grew strong. And now we're in this place where we have this autonomy, this authority, this capability to drive change again. And that is what I believe is one of the greatest powers of the Yukon, because we have this vision of Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow, the spirit and intent, the spirit that was birthed out of the challenge of the negotiations, of the determination of our leaders to work together as one Yukon people, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, Dene, Kaska, Tlingit, Han, one people, creating a better tomorrow for the children to come. YG, Canada, Yukon First Nations, that is our intent. That's the objective of today. And so a better tomorrow for the children to come. Where we are at now is a place to redefine and re-narrate what that potential prosperity means. What does it actually look like? Is it more numbers, more money in the bank account? And at this day and age, I do believe that we're working towards recognizing that that's not it. It's community, right? It's confidence, purpose, love, belonging. Also from one of my colleagues at Yukon First Nations Climate Action, she came up with that, Jody Gustafson, love, purpose, belonging. So how do we foster love, purpose, and belonging in all of the young people? How do we give them a better tomorrow? How do we educate? And I'm very grateful in being open to direction and to where the world places me. I realize that I'm being moved, I'm being directed by whomever into a place of education. And so I'm very honored to be one of the members of the interim committee for the Yukon First Nations School Board, which is really important work. It is one of the greatest honors of my life and some of the most important work, along with my work with the young people, to develop their reconnection vision and action plan with the 13 young people for climate change. But thinking about how we can transform education for a better tomorrow to equip young people with whole person ways of being. I'm just very grateful to be in a position where I'm capable of doing that and to have the teachings of the leaders and those before me to give me the courage and the confidence to do that, along with the strength and the energy of the young people, and then the devotion, the love of children. I couldn't ask for greater purpose. With that, though, that's what I have to share for you. It's just a bit of a moment of love. And I like to close in song. So I'll sing you a quick song. And this is going to be a bit of a song, a bit of a tension song about hardship and about taking moments to listen when you're uncertain. Because I notice that sometimes when I speak, people come away feeling either good about themselves or kind of wondering where they're going. But this is a song about listening when things don't go right. Way up high on the mountain, way up high in the sky, we fly. Way down low in the creek, singing a song to me. She said, lovely child, don't you see the mist up in your way? Step over the windfall, climb high, slide, fall, the rain singing to me. From creek to peak, the way you see can be the path to true. Brave, sweet, humble rain, tell me what to do. So Guinness Cheesh, everybody. Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing this moment with me.
Nancy Cho, thank you so much, Jocelyn. And to steal your words, thank you for giving us this time to reflect and to be inspired. There's some nice messages for you in the chat there. But we do have a few minutes. I wanted to give an opportunity, since we're joined by such a big group, if anyone wanted to ask Jocelyn a question or just join in the conversation today. Please feel free to unmute or to post any questions in the chat there.
Hi, Jocelyn.
I
just wanted to say, I love the way you say the word power. You like whisper it, like kind of like hold it like it's precious, and like it is, like, especially just today with, you know, Ukraine and Russia, like power isn't aggression. Power is so just like, we all have it, and it's really important to hold and to covet. And I just love the way that you embody power and the way that you share it and encourage it in others. And I love you.
Oh, goodness, Cheesh, Leah. I'll let you guys know Leah is one of my dear friends from Masters. So like over 10 years ago. It's nice to see you, my friend.
Thank you for that, Leah. Crystal.
Wake up, everybody. My name is Crystal Rain Harry, and I'm from the Northern Secwepemc Nation. And I'm attending here today as a self-government transition coordinator for my nation. We're currently in stage 5 of the BC treaty process, and we're moving towards self-government. And I would like to ask if there's any different sort of resources that you guys used for community engagement and other. Okay, so I've looked at the Governance Institute, and they have different workshops that they've built for their community or for nations who are entering self-government. But I wanted to kind of like build my own NSTQ kind of lesson plans. And we also do a lot of traditional interviews, and we're doing work with the fisheries and stuff like that. So I connected with Jocelyn that way when I heard her talk, because we're salmon people up here, and we have a very special connection with our salmon as well. And I'm interested in learning more about developing like nation, I guess, like as an Indigenous researcher, helping develop those policies and stuff at a nation level. So when we are doing our research, you know, that our people can feel safe, that we're not going to take the information and, you know, like write a book with it, or different things that like that are real concerns to our knowledge holders, because, you know, just the way things have been done in the past. So I guess it's kind of two questions. The first one would be, do you have any advice on how to get like community engagement and education going around self-government? And the second question would be, looking for different resources and ideas for a nation. I guess kind of like intellectual property rights and I'm sorry, I can't think right now, but guidelines for research in the communities and knowledge sharing. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, Ganesh, Crystal, and I'll do my best to take a crack at those things. One resource that I'd suggest checking out is Mapping the Way, which provides a lot of information about our Yukon First Nations self-government. And for me, some of the greatest learning that I've had has been in talking to the negotiators. So there's sort of different stages of government. There's those that negotiated it. And I shouldn't even, and then I also learn a lot from talking to those that have been involved in implementation and setting it up. And now there are those today that are running the show. There's been a real evolution of that journey that is still ongoing. And so I'm not going to quite answer your question, but what I will say is that in thinking about the journey, the evolution of self-government, that started with negotiation, this place of having to fight and to prove, and then into implementation, this place of like building and so much capacity just to like get things running. And now we're in this place of where we're operating, but we're operating under a system that is not our own. And so we are fortunate to have essentially a luxury, I'll call it a luxury, to be able to envision and transform our governments to reflect like Dunke or our way. And that's what many of the nations are doing today. And so if we're thinking about wanting to teach and wanting like resources and thinking about learning about what self-government is, there's the very Western way of thinking about it. That's like about they negotiated, they implemented, but there's the actual like story of everything that took. And then now actually where we're going. So there's this sentiment sometimes that we've done it, we're done, the work's over. And I thought that too. I remember when I was younger, I was like, oh, my dad did all the work. Now I just get to like get a job and be brown. Like, no, it was like, I remember the moment when I was like, oh crap, there's still a lot to do. They're not done. So there's still a lot to do. And that's the work of the governments. So that would be one of my recommendations for just thinking bigger, more wholly about how we can be teaching about self-government. And then the other part in how we work with communities is along the same lines, really. And so there needs to be, I really like shared learning and doing in my research. And so I am not a person, I never try to like go and extract. I always try to create experiences for people where they are gaining just as much from being a part of this work as I am. Whereas, the West, the challenging or like the research that has gotten into trouble before has been very one-sided, where people are coming in, extracting, taking knowledge, and then going out, and there's just nothing. What did the people get, right? Like, and so I view my role as a researcher as community service. I hold great responsibility in this role to be a leader and to be at the forefront of indigenization and innovating policy, and to create active, meaningful change today. And so everything I do, I'm like, is this going to help my family today, or is it going to help them tomorrow? And I try and have a balance. But so much of the Western way is about planning and research too. It's about just going in and extracting and analyzing and planning and then writing a paper. Or creating a salmon ceremony where we actively call back the salmon and we reconnect people with salmon culture, and we teach children how to cut fish, and we observe, and then we write that story and the teachings that came out of it. Like that's what my understanding of what research is. And this is this is one of the tensions, because there's this very well established understanding of like, this is research, analyze, extract, report, and publish. Whereas my approach is like, this is change. This is change leading. And I observe and I learn through this emergent process that teaches and guides what we're doing. And then I reflect and I heed those teachings and guidance, and that's what I report on. So it's quite different. And it's like, and I'm still sort of trying to figure out what the nuances are, but I just know that I'm a community servant and a leader, and that's my identity. And to me, that is research. Being at the forefront of change is there's a lot of questions up there. So, but I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that was a bit helpful, because currently one of the research projects that I'm working on is, how do we define traditional governance of our nation? And even that, it's just so hard to read between the lines through all the anthropologists and different work that's been done. So yeah, I really enjoyed this Lunch and Learn. Thank you very much, Jocelyn.
Goodness cheese, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal. I also put the links to a couple of the things that Jocelyn mentioned there in the chat. And another really great group to look into is the Treaty Talks group out of NWT, which is a youth-led initiative trying to educate around the treaties, and they're doing some really great work. We probably have time for one more question or thought or comment, or if anyone would like to share anything with Jocelyn. And there's lots of really beautiful comments to you in the chat there, Jocelyn. Shani.
Hi, I would just like to share a story regarding the trees, because for me, even though I'm not First Nation, we hold a special relationship with the trees too in my culture. And I remember coming to Canada and having houseplants and how I would talk to my plants and really care for them. And my son said to me, "You're so weird. Why are you talking to the plants?" And I thought, if you don't talk to them, how will they grow? It's like your children. So when I got my daughter, he said to my daughter, and she was very young, she's a toddler at the moment, he said to her, "Oh, you got to be careful with shiny plants, because those are special to her." So, and I keep telling him, you have to have plants because they give you the oxygen to live and they keep the house air clean. So now my daughter is trying to talk to the plants because she sees me or she hears me talking to the plants. I just wanted to share that because it is important to us. We use the plants for a whole lot of, and trees for a whole lot of things. It holds the soil so that we won't be flooded away. It gives us shade for the hammocks, and it's everything for us in our culture.
Goodness geez, Shani, and that's such an important message as well. Is I speak for a lot for our Yukon Indigenous culture, specifically like Champagne and Ajax Southern Shoshone culture, because that's where I have the confidence to share and to say. But I also am always so intrigued and interested in how much the synergies between understanding what it means to be connected and living in flow with Earth of different cultures. And that is alive in pretty much all cultures. It's just in our dominant culture now, like I say, we kind of have forgotten how. And one thing I just wanted to, there's all these really amazing similarities. And so one that I got reminded of the other day and was sort of intrigued by in my role at the First Nations School Board was my daughter came home talking about leprechauns, and she made like a little leprechaun trap and she wanted to catch one. My immediate thought was, well, we have leprechauns. We have little people. There's little people here and they are lucky and you can catch them. And there are many, many stories about like the little people that live in the Yukon. And I've got a cousin whose son is on this call who saw a little person the other day or like during the summer. And she was like, we saw a little person. But we have many, many stories about them. And one of my first thoughts was, that's what you should be learning. Not about little green men, about our little men that live here and how they are lucky too. But the amount of stories like floods and like, and Noah and like Jesus and like it's incredible, to be honest. Like we are one people, we are one earth, and like we just only have to remember and to like learn from each other. But yeah, just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Jocelyn. It looks like there's one more hand up. I'll do a really quick question, Marianne. Oh, you're muted there, Marianne.
Sorry about that. Just one thing I observed is your spirituality, and then you just talked about learning about faith in about Jesus, etc. And I find that it's really challenging in First Nations in regards to spirituality and in regards to religion. There's still that struggle there, and I find it in myself too. So I really want to say Masicho for your spirituality. It's so beautiful, and I agree with what you say. We shouldn't be learning about leprechauns, but about our own, little people, because we talk about that here too in the Northwest Territory. So we share something in common. So Masicho.
Goodness Chish, Marianne, and goodness Chish too for that support. Because I will admit that being open about my spirituality is only something that I have started with, that I grew with the confidence of the Climate Action Fellowship with the young people that I work with. That was the first time that I really opened up about the fact that I have an awareness that was born out of the fact that I lost my dad when I was 13. When I was 13 years old, I lost my dad. But when you are 13, you are powerful. And so I maintained connection with him, and I still have connection with him today that I'm ever grateful for. And his influence and guidance in my life is why I stand here, why I have this voice. And I believe that fully with my entire heart. And I believe that we are all guided and loved by the ancestors. We are not alone. And their ancestors, they're in the trees, they're in the rocks. It's just the whole life and being of Earth. And one of the visions that I had, or awarenesses, awakenings, I was like, there is a power in the earth. I was like, I can just feel it coming up through First Nations people and out in like song and knowing and solidarity and just hope. And I get really excited thinking about that. And again, my whole purpose now is just to create some safe space and for belief and openness, and allowing people to sit as they are and just really acknowledging the limitations of wearing a hat and covering half of who you actually are. And I believe that if we become whole, if we walk with the confidence of our heart, of our body, of spirituality, with like the strength of our mind, we will make different decisions. We will make different decisions that see us fall back in line with Earth, with balance, and with each other. So that's what we can go for. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I do see all of your very kind comments. I'm grateful. Yeah, I see little people all over the place, I'm telling you. The other thing, I'll say really quickly too, I'm going to do a couple plugs before we close. I did see one comment about my TikTok. So I'm on TikTok and I really enjoy it. And I just essentially, I go on dog walks and I just like say little things like what I said today. You saw that a lot of I was like, meh, meh, all over the place. So I just do little TikToks from like, talk to a tree. But I really enjoy it. And it's just one of the things that I try and do is connect with young people and create this safe space where I talk about spirituality. And I talk about being true to yourself and for young people. And the other thing is that one of the things that I'm hoping to really revitalize or be a part of is revitalizing Yukon's First Nation storytelling culture. So I'm partnering with Da-kal-a-ma this year and helping to deliver a storytelling program there. So please, if you are, maybe I'll make sure somebody tells a little people story. And we're doing the kids tent. So yeah, that's a perfect idea. But I really believe that experiencing the stories, like hearing them and experiencing them, has the ability to change your outlook on life. So I just want to create more opportunity for storytellers to tell their story, and for all of us to have the privilege of hearing them and of being able to see the world as more. But 101, Gunas Chish, everybody. I'm so grateful for your time.